All right. Can you see me?
I sure can. We've made contact.
All right. Well,
Okay, I just want to. My voice might be quavering a little bit, like yours
oh,
was when you called Captain Beefheart for the first time.
oh yeah. Well, look, I'm just a guy.
I
Like
know. I'm
and
thankful for that.
John was. He projected this aura of this mystical, transcendence or something that you know, it- he definitely had a charisma. That's for sure.
I think of the Carlos Castaneda Don Juan in the desert,
He
Howlin'
liked
Wolf
to
on.
promote. I think that he definitely played up the mythos. Because people, whenever I say, yeah, and he was living in a trailer in the desert, they see an image of a nomadic desert dweller, the lost tribes of Israel or something, like
Right, Yaqui Indian.
slogging through or the Yaqui. So, but actually, no, it was a trailer park. Go anywhere. It
Beautiful.
was in Lancaster, which is sort of this military based town. It's actually, it's not a unpleasant place,
Is
and they
this when he
do.
was doing his painting?
Well, when he was doing his painting, really, the majority of it was done north.
Hmm.
He and his wife moved up to a place called Trinidad, California,
Okay.
which is near Eureka, it's another thing entirely. It's near the Oregon border and the redwood. It's redwood country up there, and
Oh wow.
oh yeah,
I
so it's a
realize.
lot. And he was on a beautiful bluff overlooking the Pacific, and he could
Good.
see.
Good for
He could,
Don.
yeah, yeah. I mean, he had a nice place.
That's
I
beautiful.
visited him out there. He wasn't much. I mean, I don't think that he was a lot happier. Funny to say, or just in general, living up there. But to me, it was like idyllic because,
Maybe too idyllic for him.
yeah, he liked to be a complainer and a miserable
Contrarian.
sometimes. Contrarian, yeah, everything about that is correct. But he was a powerful. I never met anybody like him. I really miss the guy. But if
What a
you got him on a
blessing.
bad day, forget it. He was like really
I can
very
only imagine.
difficult.
My
Yeah, he was yelling at you in your face and enjoying it. I think there was an aspect.
right. Yeah, my introduction to his music, I was on the way to a gig and a drummer at the time put on Trout Mask Replica and he said, "Listen to this. This is like organized chaos."
Yeah, well, that's a good description. I mean, and it's really down to the fact that Don claimed to have a master plan as far as how everything fit together with the parts on that record, but he needed John French
Mhm.
and the band itself to really work out how many sections of this before we go to this, and then how to play off one section at another to create these amazing. They're really like collages, but they have to be precisely played in order to work. Because yeah, I mean, what sounds really random, the only random element would be Don where he drops his lyrics on these tracks, or
Right.
how when he decides to pick up a horn to blow. Those are free parts.
Right.
Everything else was rehearsed to death. Like,
Well, that was something
yeah,
I wanted to tap into was,
sure,
hearing his records over the years from the ones you were on to Clear Spot and
sure.
I was always curious, how in the world did this go down? Were there charts? Was there a
Well,
storyboard or
well, French definitely, had a lot to do with this more complicated stuff, like beginning. I mean, French was on more albums than anybody, so he's key
yeah.
to helping arrange Don's visions. You
Hmm.
know, although he has a lot of baggage and bad feeling to this
We're
day about it. So, I mean, I hate to say it, but Don could be very uh, bossy, if not tyrannical
sure.
at times. And, he could cow these younger members into doing his will. He had that, but they believed in it, at least up to a point
There's
where then
something
it
to
became untenable. But, how I think having worked with French, Don would assign parts when it got into this more avant garde territory.
hmm
Maybe they'd, some he banged out on the piano, some he whistled, to the
Okay, yeah.
members, and some he, played kind of rudimentary uh, lines on guitar. He wasn't really a guitarist. Some he took out of, previous solos. Like, I'll tell you, there's a free horn solo on Am Man B, right? This
Hmm.
is a track on Child Mask. I think it ends side two. It's a beautiful solo. He blew it once.
Yeah.
But years later, he said to me, that saxophone solo, I want you to learn that on guitar. And I did in stages. And then later he said, okay. And when we were doing Ice Cream for Crow, the track, The Host, the Ghost, the Most Holy One,
Right.
starts on, it's me on guitar going, doo, 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 bang. So that was a line, that was a fragment of a line from
Hmm.
that horn solo. So he's like a collagist, or a sculptor. He could take parts, even stuff he had improvised, or he would tell you they were composed. They were through composed to be precise. Like, he
It's
couldn't
such an
play
alt.
him, the same way twice. That's for sure. He didn't really have the technical ability. He could lay down very beautiful parts, intricate lines, but ask him to repeat them.
Would he
But
relay concepts with imagery? I wanted to.
also,
Yeah.
yeah, he'd say like, "Okay, play like you died." He wrote that on a drawing he
Oh,
handed
I
to
like
me.
that one.
Yeah, before I did before recording Flavor Bud Living, I got a note that he passed to me. And so, through a combination of these techniques, he could get the results, which he'd modify, honestly, in my experience, right up to the point of recording. In other words,
Yeah.
there could be enormous changes in the last minute,
Mm.
depending on whatever, And once on Ice Cream for Crow, we thought we had the whole thing nailed. We'd worked 2 weeks of him teaching and us rehearsing the band tracks, and then he insisted we record them all for a final, check through on the cassette. And then he played that cassette for his wife, Jan, and then she flipped when she heard what he had a new arrangement concept going on a track called Semi Multicolored Caucasian. And there he was like, okay, I wanted you to do, everybody thinks it's hip to have like a fake ending on a song. There were, songs in the day that would fade out and you'd think it was over and then they'd come fading back in again for a reprise. And it was a
Suspicious minds string
psychedelic.
together.
Yeah, I can think of a few,
Yeah.
that did this. I'm sure you can too. So he said, I'm going to have a fake beginning. And if you know, I mean, how that track it goes, ba da 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 bam, drum roll, da 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 da. He said, okay, repeat da 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 twice. People are going to think the needle is stuck in their record, man. Isn't that it, right? So he had us learn like da 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 da, like it had a stutter in it. So his wife got to that point in the listening session they did together and flipped and said, Don, you're ruining my favorite song, because it had existed in a rehearsal tape from the
Yeah.
Trout Mask days. So when he showed up to record, he said, go back. I was wrong, man. Jan was right. Go back. Go back to the old way. Yeah, I mean, so, we're the Stooges. We put ourselves in there. There were a lot of things like that, like random things in the sessions that would crop up, and then Don would be, instructing us, and we're like, just Jesus Christ. There was an element of improv, is all I'm saying, right
Right.
up to recording. Don was, the master, so if he decided to reconfigure something, we would have to do it, and that was fine. But I
Yeah.
have to say, we also put in a lot. Sometimes in the instructional part where he'd be writing these things,
Right.
be really good up to a point, and then he'd get bored and he'd walk up and like, oh, you guys know what to do here.
Yeah.
Then we would have to have little band meetings without him. We didn't tell him to try and codify the stuff. Okay, I think he said we go from this part to this part. Why don't we do 8 of these and then we'll follow with this other section? Okay,
Right.
so we'd sort of stitch the songs together ourselves
Right.
And then we'd play him for him the next day, and he'd be like, either, "Oh man, no, that's not right at all," and it would seem arbitrary, like, I mean, and we'd laugh about it sometimes, like, "Oh, he doesn't even know."
You did right.
But I mean, he did know, some of the times where you'd think he was just like bullshitting us wildly, as far
Right.
as
For the
like,
sake of
it,
it.
yeah, just for the fuck of it. Then stuff would sync up like unbelievably. And a good example is
Wow.
there's a song called Cardboard Cutout Sundown, right?
I listened to
So
it last night.
yeah,
Yeah.
so that was done in two parts, right? Because he had this piano tape for me to learn. It was him through composed piece banged out on the piano.
Mm.
And then I learned it as best I could, and and that it's frustrating because I would say, "John, you're using 10 fingers, and there's only 6 strings on the damn guitar." And he'd be like, "You gotta find another four, man. You better find another one."
Make it work.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, so he was. It's like snipe hunt, like with putting people on these impossible missions,
The
right?
constant disorientation.
Constantly. He was a master of that. So then, I finished the whole thing, what I thought was the best accurate transcription done by ear. I worked
Hmm.
really hard. Sent it
Hmm.
to him, and then he comes back and says, "That's great, but it's not the whole thing." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" "Well, there's more, of course. I'm going to send you another section I didn't send you, and just tack that on at the end where the first one ends. Just
Well,
learn this new part."
bless you for having the patience
Yeah, well, see, I was look, I
and
was
you
like a
revere him.
Mooney. I was like in those days here,
Yeah.
and that I was happy to be at his disposal to work really hard because I was a believer
Yeah.
in the righteousness of the project as viewed from a world historical standpoint, in a way,
Absolutely.
and that I knew it was important stuff, and everybody else who was in that band at that time really felt the same way. I think the earlier bands were more like, well, maybe we'll make some money and we should be doing
Right.
the blues more because they were a great blues band.
Right.
But
Right.
he was really going for the ages, with a great art statement, and especially, Doc and Ice Cream for Co are both like kind of returned to form where he
Yes.
didn't give a fuck. He's trying to like get back into that
Right.
avant-garde thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it worked out. So I learned that, and then he had taught them independent of me even coming out there at their first rehearsals before I got there from New York to join them. Another thing in the studio that he whistled and then he thumped on a box or something for Cliff. Or I don't know how he had all these like things. He'd be driving in his Volvo from Lancaster down
Oh
to
wow.
LA, and he go, "Cliff, kind of a trip, fall, stumble, crawl." I heard one of those
Oh
tapes.
wow.
That was one instruction, and then he's like, and he do it with like mouth percussion, like a rapper or something, like a human
Amazing.
beatbox. So then Cliff would have to take these things, or like him shuffling. He'd get the sound of his windshield wipers. There were all sorts of found sounds out of nature.
Oh,
He'd
it's
throw
wonderful.
a plate against a wall. I was in them once, and it'd go wah, 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 wobbling on the floor while it spun around. He'd tape it and say, "Yeah, that's the drum solo. I'm gonna give that to Williams."
Oh, that's
Right.
fantastic.
Yeah, I
No,
know. So he was
nobody works like
really
that.
nobody.
Nobody.
No,
Yeah.
nobody. He was way ahead of everybody in his
It
techniques,
still
and
is.
they're very primitive. Yeah, I think he's the greatest. I'm glad you like his stuff. I'm just weary of trying to like push it because I've done a bunch of tributes over the years, and
Right.
it's different. I mean, the band is not the problem. It's always been if you bring in vocalists, they're always. I mean, they're not ideal.
You
There's
need
nobody
Howard
who.
Wolf and
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He was inimitable, really, that way. So,
did he talk about the wolf a lot?
well, he first told me I never listen.
Oh
Yeah,
wow.
and then he would say, "Wow, I might have been in the same room when it was playing, but I never listened to it,
Oh,
man."
that's fantastic.
Well, he'd always figure out a way to contradict, to
Yeah,
take himself out of the
of course.
picture to admit any influences.
Never heard of him.
Well, yeah, he'd say that, but then he would admit no, because I went with him to see a guy in Lancaster once, and
Hmm.
this guy was like knew him from high school, and he's like poking him in the shoulder and going, John, remember when you played the teen fair? You did Muddy Waters, Jimmy Reed,
Yeah.
Wolf. You could do Spot On and Brad Lightning Slim. And Tom was just like, listen to that guy, man. Like as if the guy was like, he wasn't even there listening to it and he was enjoying the guy's rap. And
Right.
he was
Right.
just so removed from it.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to ask just one more thing about Beefheart,
Yeah.
the exploding note theory.
Well, what can I tell you about that? Uh, it could be like he had thought about that a lot and come up with that description. But basically, what it boiled down to is play each note as if it had no relation to the subsequent or previous note when
Right.
playing his music.
It seems like the musical version of Burroughs cut-ups.
Well, with
Maybe.
cut-ups, it's more random, I think. With cut-ups, the idea was take a bunch of disparate chunks out of like a text
Right.
and then recombine them. I mean, cut them up in snippets and then, make a new text out of it.
Get a
With
firework.
Beefheart, it's like,
Yeah.
no, it's more like an attack principle.
Yeah.
Exploding notes, like if he played something on the piano or, a line that you learned on the guitar, when you executed it, you would add this kind of like herky jerky quality to make it
Beautiful.
sound like everything was a disembodied note. Okay. It
Well,
wasn't like a cluster, it wasn't like a series of notes, like a lyrical
it
line
wasn't.
or anything.
Right, right, right. So
So
I noticed on your discography there's a record called The Exploding Note Theory, but and I haven't taken a listen yet.
I did something with an artist named spoken word artist, Italian bass player, free jazz guy,
Okay.
Danilo Gallo.
I've
That's
heard the
his
name.
name. Yeah, he's a avant bassist living in. Well, when I knew him, he was resident in Venice. That we recorded in Verona, where Romeo
Wow.
and Juliet took place. He
Right.
might have been from Verona originally, but then he was living for some years in Venice. Anyway, that's a really good album.
I'm not playing tonight. I'm gonna listen to that record tonight.
Yeah, I mean, we did it. I think it's on Bandcamp. It says here, so I don't know.
Great.
I mean, it was his label. He put it out. He picked the players. I had fun making it because I always Italy really became my favorite place. Honestly,
Yeah.
just climate and food wise, scenery wise. It used to be Holland. Holland is a bit cold, though, as you know. People are very
Beats.
warm there. Don't get me wrong. I'm just not. At one point, I was doing many shows a year all over Holland, but
Yeah.
everything changed. The circuit changed. The whole idea of bringing American jazz or new music artists, which was seemingly important in Europe in the 90s, kind of fell by the wayside because there was a sort of a right wing takeover of all these governments,
Mm.
fueled by a lot of anger at the idea of foreign imports. It's sort of like Trump with his tariffs and the whole thing. So they slapped tariffs on our earnings, which limited my touring in all these countries because I wasn't going to go out for under a certain amount of money.
Yeah, it seems to be a reoccurring theme,
Yeah, well,
unfortunately.
I wished I wasn't so dependent on having to chase the dollar or the euro
What
or whatever. That back then it was the lira, and the franc and etc.
your debut, The Skeleton at the Feast, was in Amsterdam? Is
Yeah, most of that record was recorded in Amsterdam, and it was a documentation because I felt I needed to get at this point a record out of some sort of what I'd been doing for a couple of years live all over the place.
it's a
It was
phenomenal piece of work.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it really is the energy, and it kind of coheres the selection because it represents a lot of different sides of my playing. And then you get the big chunk of the Golem soundtrack, which was
Yes,
contemporaneous with those gigs. And there you hear me. That was recorded in Brooklyn at the premiere, the world premiere at the this. Well, it was like a festival that was sponsored by the Brooklyn Academy of Music. But the
phenomenal.
debut was, thank you. The debut was in the Museum of the Moving Image in Queens, right?
Okay.
But what happened is, I mean, there was a festival going for some years through BAM, Brooklyn Academy of Music, called the Next Wave Festival.
Mm-hmm.
So under that, I don't know who hooked me up, but maybe I had a manager for a minute who might have came up with that. But the idea was, I think I got all of $1,000, and the mandate was find another art form to combine your music with. So you could have done a dance piece, you could do that, this and that. And I thought, oh, how cool would it be to accompany a movie?
That's the start of your scoring?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the Golem, because I'd seen pictures as a boy in Monster World or some, horror magazine. I was a big fan in the 60s of, oh, there was a magazine called Famous Monsters, and later on
Right.
Monster World, spin-off, Spaceman. I love these. And I got quite the education in horror movies, which I was fascinated with as a boy. And I am still to a degree, not that much. Certainly not the contemporary horror film much at all. But
Right, right.
now, but back then it was still sort of, it wasn't plastered all over in your face. These were like underground phenomena of mainly popularized by, kids and teenagers. And so,
Sure.
although, in reading those magazines, there was a history stemming back to the dawn of silent cinema. So I was interested in that. And that's where I first heard about this film, The Golem, which was actually the third attempt to film this legend. The other
Wow.
two, there's only fragments of the other two existing, but they keep digging up additional footage. But the third one was the charm, and it went all over the world. It played in New York
I still need
and
to see
held
it.
over. You can really delve into what I would term Golemania in both,
Yeah.
online archives and yeah,
Yeah, I just got
with
hit. Well, I mean, my mom's side of the family is Jewish, but
yes,
I, which I guess I'm in.
right, of
So
course,
my,
you're
my
a member of the tribe officially.
my intro was this introducing Kafka little graphic novel that R. Crumb did the artwork for, and he
Right.
did this beautiful 3-page feature on the subject.
Oh,
And but that's just wonderful.
well, that's great. I didn't know that. On the Golem, I gotta check it out.
Uh, I'll
I'm a
send you a
fan of
copy.
this.
I'll send
Yeah,
you a copy.
I'm a fan. Well, yeah, I heard about it. So to me, because I was fascinated with my Jewish heritage and still am to a degree,
Yeah.
uh, I I I said I'd like to see this movie. Something tells me it'll be really up my alley. So I like searched around to find a copy because in those there was not in those days it wasn't as on VHS is all we had. So it had not been digitized or obtainable as a DVD, of course. On the same hand, it wasn't really available on yet on VHS. And
Right.
eventually, but I asked around because I'm a film buff and I had friends working here, and somebody said the Museum of Modern Art has a copy.
Oh wow.
So that's where I went. I went and arranged for a private screening, which you can do. Not that many people know that. So I came out of this little screening booth that they had, saying like, "Whoa!" My mind was blown. I know I can really go to town. So then I did, get a transfer of their black and white version, put on a VHS to work with or two. Then I
Yeah.
invited a childhood friend of mine named Walter Horn. I go
Mm-hmm.
way back with who was my best friend growing up, and
Oh,
he
wow.
was a new music composer. He'd actually, me, I majored in English literature. sort
Mm-hmm.
of got into academia at Yale University through my
Yeah.
writing skills. But I
Wow.
was musical, and I've been in bands with Walter. And anyway, so he joined me on trying to fashion, come up with a score. So really, he's responsible for several of the cues, which I adapted for solo guitar.
Very
But
cool.
yeah, but on that recording, it's me and Walter. And in the audience was Laurie Anderson, I recall,
Oh,
and some
wow.
other prominent musicians out of the avant garde scene.
Yeah.
And she came up and said that was fantastic. So we were a big hit. And then I
I would
got
have that
the,
on my business card. That's enough right there.
I should put it on my quotes of notable quotes, but I don't remember exact words, but she
That's
was
pretty cool.
complimentary. And anybody who was there was like impressed with what we'd done. And so then, uh, you know, I tried to keep it going with Walter, but he was just doing music as a hobby, and at that, soon I was to quit my day job in the following year. So I started to do performances in Europe with the Knitting Factory, a
Yeah.
club where I was really basing. I kind of emerged out of that club
I've seen
as
some
a
of those clips.
yeah,
Yeah.
as Gary Lucas. And so I had a partner we did a few tours all over Europe. And at first, on one of them, it was called the Jewish Avant Garde Music Tour, the Jam Tour.
Okay.
Michael Dorff, who ran the club and was taking us around Europe,
I know that
said,
name.
yeah,
Yeah.
he said, listen, is there a way you can do this solo? So I said, yeah, probably. Let me, figure out how to do that, which I did. So because on the first few shows, I had guest keyboardists of other ensembles,
Right.
and it was successfully. They did a good job, but the best was, I'd say, when I nailed it as
Freedom.
a solo player, and then
Yeah.
I didn't have to rely. I had a few in the subsequent years with Walter for old time's sake,
Sure.
which was
Yeah.
fun. But solo
The
is the way I kind of had to. Just from an economic standpoint, it's been my default position.
and you're free to move whichever direction you choose. And
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, if I like ensembles, don't get me wrong. I've had
right.
some amazing times on the road and successful concerts, and maybe more people at these shows too. Because it seems like, I think as far as solo vis-a-vis playing with people, most audiences kind of prefer seeing a exchange of energy when you have multiple musicians on a stage.
That alchemy.
You know,
There's something
then
to it.
yeah,
It's
then
a
to
human thing.
focus to ask someone to focus on one person for an hour and a half, or whatever these concerts normally were. It can be you can get large audiences if you're popular, but to just come into a cold, it's a stretch for a lot of people.
Sure.
So
Sure.
they get bored, or it's too much music for them from one person. Whereas like a group is a little bit more on the enjoyable side from looking at this play of energy, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I've
But
been
it's everything's a trade-off. Then it's
yeah.
how much can I pay these guys if I'm the
Mhm.
leader? Keep the overhead down so I can make money. I'm doing it for a living, right?
The solo live scoring has been going well. I've been following
Yeah,
with the
yeah.
freaks,
Well,
Dracula.
I've got about 12, and now I just came up with freaks. I'm gonna make a page. Yeah.
I love the Instagram clip from the other night and the description. Whoever wrote the description of that, it's such a beautiful.
The
Uh,
chase scene, yeah, yeah.
the way they articulated what was going on was really beautiful.
That was, I have a digital assistant who's pretty good. She's smart. She's from Latin America, actually, and she's living here. She married a Jewish guy. So I
Yeah,
worked with her on these clips, and I vetted it. She came up with that copy, and I ran
it
with it.
looked incredible. It looked so
Yeah,
good.
no, listen, I said, take this scene. And lucky for me, I have a guy who has archived me on and off. He's just like a super fan who loves my work. He's
Great.
a deadhead too. I know he's trading live tapes and whatnot of me, but I don't care because anything to keep my name alive and to spread the word, get other people turned on to it is fine by me. I mean,
Your story is incredible, and what you're doing now, I just feel the way you've gone about your art. You know, you stuck to your guns, and I think it's a great message for young people as well.
thanks. I think, I hope so. I sometimes I feel as stupid as anything though. Like, gee, I thought I'd be a little bit farther along at this age. When I'm looking at blank calendar pages for the next couple of months without a gig, I'm like, Jesus Christ, wasn't it going to be easier if I like sticking to my guns at this stage of the game? But see, a lot of the problem is, I'd say, on me, because I have such a diversity of music out there that I have at least 60 albums out of in all sorts of genres, right? Over
Right.
all these years, that to the average music fan, they just, if they know my name at all, they maybe, yeah, he's a great guitarist, or he's like a lead, whatever, as a guitar
Some kind of
player.
label.
Yeah, they need something, to hang on. And whereas someone would say, well, I know him from Jeff Buckley, Grace.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are going to say, I know him from Beefheart. They're
Mm-hmm.
those fans. And then they're my fans who, like, have seen me in so many iterations and like mostly all of it.
I love it, and it's
Well, see, well, God bless you, because I know there are guys like you out there. But to try and gather them or to really figure out a way to, keep you all interested, I don't know. I mean, I do a lot of social media posting. I don't ask for money. I'll probably do a live stream later if I can get the energy, summon the energy to hook up the pedal board over there in the corner, and play a little bit. I did a lot of this in the pandemic, and it was like 3 times a week live
the live stream. Yeah,
streaming.
I love
Yeah.
the live streams. They're
Great.
really cool.
Well, yeah, I think so, but again, I was always voluntarily, saying people send me whatever you feel like because, it's like nice, but I wasn't going to like put a paywall around it like, okay, you got to subscribe. I wouldn't know how to do it, and I didn't think it was I don't, everybody was hurting a bit because everything was like paralyzed. Kind of I was just trying to keep buoyant, and entertain people in the doldrums there.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you like it. That makes me very gratified because, I get ghosted. It's like so rude by
Mm-hmm.
people who, business people in the music biz, a
Mm-hmm.
lot who don't know what to say or do to proposals. And then they just go, and then a lot of them are like talk about out of both sides of their mouth, like, oh, yeah, we love you. We'll have you back here when you want to. And then you
Right.
pursue it, and then they all of a sudden, like, whoop, that you're ghosted. A friend of mine I had lunch with today and telling him the story. It's so funny. Said, "Oh, I think it's because they're embarrassed because they just can't do anything and they feel bad about it, so they'd rather say nothing than apologize." I
I
take
think
it personally, though. It's hard not to, when you're putting all your heart and soul into this for so many years. It's like,
sure. I It seems like as the old paradigm sort of falls away, the idea of a record label and being signed and the old,
yeah, it's no
linear path is
panacea.
almost
No, it's
it's
not.
sort of vanishing.
It's vanishing. It's like changed so much, and the same goes too for gigs because see, in Holland, for instance, probably the most famous or to me the best place to play over the years was this old church called the Paradiso.
Mhm.
That's been it's been up there a long time, and I played there. Must have played there at least 25, 30 times over the years, and sometimes twice a year. Then there's the jazz club there, the Bim House. Well, the people who used to book me were forcibly retired.
Right.
And yeah, well, that's what they
Yeah.
do in Europe and a lot of places. People in the arts, especially if they're getting some sort of state subsidy, like a club or a venue, have age mandates. It's like teaching in some cities,
Right.
like, okay, uh, you're not allowed to be a teacher of young people once you hit 65 or something. You're not relevant. Whatever reason they have. or
Hmm.
we can't afford you. I don't know. So a lot of the reliable gigs that I had for years and years and years have gone away. And then the people they brought in, these 20-year-olds or whatever,
Hmm.
to bring some fresh blood into it, they don't know me. I don't know why, because I've certainly been banging the drum, as best I could myself, or once in a while with publicists and whatnot, to
Well, I'm
spread the word, but so they may not know me, and then they're like, can we take a risk on it? There's also pressures on everybody now, especially with tariffs and the whole thing, to
right.
make sure that they're turning a profit.
Yeah.
So, well, we had them here, 25 times, and, we lost money on them. Who knows? They were state subsidized gigs, though, those two. But then you get a place like Milky Way over there. They're not state subsidized, so it's like purely profit driven. And I
Hmm.
played there too a bunch of times, not as many, but they're, whoever is like doing the booking, I think, was afraid to, yeah, I don't know. It's just embarrassing. I mean, like, I know how good it is. So I'm still doing it, and I really don't have a B plan anyway. It's not like I'd easily be a teacher. I don't really have the credentials on a lot of university slots unless they were like, okay, we got a legendary musician, so we should
Yeah.
give him the. Yeah, but again, it's like I'm still trying to do it in the way I've done it for a lot of years. Maybe I'm the old dog. You can't teach an old dog new trick. I don't know what it is. I like to lecture. I knew people like in Amsterdam. I've lectured and specific professors who would invite me at Yale and whatnot. I do it. I did master classes. I do them again.
I watched your TED talk. It was great.
Yeah. Well, thanks.
Wait,
That was fun. I mean, I'm still a fervent believer in blues as a unifying principle in the world, but also as far as my own music, everything, even, Chinese music or
well, that was
music.
the element I loved. It almost reminded me of like Joseph Campbell's Monomyth, where you're drawing parallels between worlds,
Yeah,
Robert
you'd seem,
Johnson and 1930s Chinese music.
yeah, 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 yeah.
And I
Well,
well, no one's there's no other video on YouTube that does that.
no, no, I mean, I think I have it in a fresh slant. I have a kind of mind as a double Gemini, if you believe in this bullshit,
Oh, I
that,
sure do.
okay, well, so I can see things from not just two angles, but from like a myriad angle, a bunch of perspectives. And then I think I'm pretty good at spotting patterns, pattern recognition. And this
Hmm.
is why I hit on this theory as a unifying theory. But, I mean, I think it's important to try and connect dots for people. They don't see it, a lot of these things. And I think if they would, they might even, it could be a better overall situation society wise for people because they'd understand better that everybody like feels a certain level of anxiety and pain or joy and ecstasy.
That's beautifully said. I just wanted to ask you on a musical level, are you familiar with the late great Robert Ward?
No, that name is familiar. How do I know it? Is he a
He,
gospel singer? I'm thinking of Clara Ward, I
he,
guess.
he was he was a Georgia soul blues great songwriter and
Okay.
guitarist. Super
Yeah.
unique style, played with his fingers and played through a
Well,
magnetone amp with a pitch vibrato, and that's
nice.
where Lonnie Mack got. But he would do these double stops.
Oh, really?
I've got an acoustic here. There's something like
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Definitely Chinese. Definitely those Chinese scales there.
and he,
Yeah.
he would work that into these like really original, strikingly original compositions. And I will send you some of his stuff.
Oh,
He
I love
started,
to hear it. That's great.
yeah,
Well, for sure, I do arrangements, as you know. If you hear The Edge of Heaven, I
yes,
do a lot of those. There's one song called the heck is the name?
the
Oh,
wall.
yeah, The Wall, where I'm using that, and also even there was I do film music, and I did the film Seven Faces of Dr. Lowe. It's a one. It was a key film in my youth. It's really delightful fantasy film with stop motion animation.
Oh wow,
So
clay
that's,
or
yeah, well, or armatures in the style of like Willis O'Brien who did King Kong. and
Oh
Ray
boy.
Harryhausen, right? I
Oh, this
think
will go on my list.
it's Jim Danforth, who is sort of a disciple of Harryhausen, and the theme is by Lee Harline, who wrote "When You Wish Upon a Star."
Mm-hmm.
And because to get a Chinese music flavor, there's a lot of well, anyway, just type in Gary Lucas, The Seven Faces of Dr. Lowe,
Got it.
and it's spelled Lao. And it's a book. It was a 20, I think it came out in the 20s or 30s
Great.
by, who was the guy who wrote it? Charles Finney. And it's sort of like an American fantasy, and it's got political aspects and philosophy. It's a really good book. But they
Wonderful.
made this fantastic film with Tony Randall doing seven different faces of playing a Chinese itinerant magician who shows up in a frontier town and kind of charms everybody and paints the town and unites people. Yes, like it's great.
It's right up my alley.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
oh, I know. Even thinking about the music really evokes this. And anyway, so in my arrangement, I used because there's a Chinese kind of sounding theme, and I used that double stop kind of
Yeah.
two string. But
Locky.
a lot of soul music actually coming out of Memphis soul, I think, or it could be just in the South in general, like Dock of the Bay, like Otis Redding stuff.
Right.
They do those kind of,
It's like double
Beefheart.
stops.
Beefheart on the song on Safest Mill called "I'm Glad."
Would have that
Uses
been?
some of those licks.
Was
That's
that
as R&B
Rye
as like
Cooter?
gets.
The Edge of Heaven. I just wanted to touch on is not. I mean, the music is unreal, but sonically, it's so great. Your acoustic guitar sounds so good on that.
Thank you.
Is that
It's
your
really
main
funny
act?
you say it because I'm going to tell you that's a real grab bag of different recordings that
Oh,
I did
really?
over a couple of years. And some of them were done right here, direct to DAT.
Man.
Yeah. I had just primitive, mic setup was a little mixer and two vocal mics on two amplifiers.
Oh, it just goes to show you.
Yeah, see, I mean, like, you can get really good results sometimes with just the most primitive setups. And then there were a couple of tracks that were done, like in the studio, like uh, The Wall, for instance, was done, I think, there was a Foley studio. And so on some off time, we got in there and they had a pretty good setup, I think, of 24 tracks. So maybe those are like probably the best sounding recording stuff. And
It's
then I did some at the Knitting Factory. They had a little booth in the basement. It was like 24 tracks with three D88 machines, which were like early digital recorders at 8 tracks only, but they slaved together three of them to make 24 tracks. And
a wonderful.
yeah, so I don't know, and then I cobbled them all together only because I got sort of like written up in a French music magazine. Suddenly, everybody in the hip music scene was like, "This is the guy who wrote these songs for Jeff Buckley."
Oh, that's okay. Sure.
Yeah, and so then a French label contacted me and said, "You have anything where?" Yeah, I don't know. I left some records in a hip record store, and one thing led to another, and I heard from these guys, and
That's neat.
we'd like to like we basically are doing world music and French jazz. Do you have anything? I said, well, yeah, I think so. I'm coming um, to Europe, and we can have a meeting in Paris. So
Hmm.
I flew in there and met them in my hotel, and I said, I have this Chinese music album,
Yeah.
and they said that sounds really cool. So I don't know. I was embroiled in trying to get my tracks back.
Well, was it just a year before you released the Eastern India? Was
Yeah,
the Rishte?
yeah. With Najma, maybe it was. I think. Well, actually, no. Edge of Heaven came out. in 2002.
Okay.
Reshay came out in 2008.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, but I had, anyway, the tapes were, they were originally earmarked for another label who had given me something like 5 grand only to do the recording, and then they bought to putting it out. They ran out of money. It was
Hmm.
basically a dance music label. So I just somehow I said, I'll pay you that money back if I can get my tracks back. And they said, okay. And then
Okay.
I turned around and made a deal with this French label and just dumped all these like masters on them, and they put it together. And the
Right.
artwork too, and it looked beautiful. It came out on 9/11. I was in Paris on that day.
Well, yeah, it's straight. I remember Dylan had an album that came out that day.
Yeah, the same day.
Love and
Yep.
Theft.
So I was in Paris that day, and then I saw the footage of the Trade Center coming down. It was
Oh goodness.
really freaky.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's sort of how it finally got out there. And then, I tried to get a label interested to license it. They balked for the US. And then eventually it came in as an import at Tower Records, and it was selling a bit, but it was very expensive. And
Right.
then eventually in 2009, probably this is why the copy you got is like came out in 2009. That was because I finally got Knitting Factory to do a US license with the
Okay.
original artwork. But you
Great.
see, it really was released first of all as in France in 2002. So it's,
Okay.
and
Okay.
I
That.
think it recorded in the end of the 90s, most of it. It just was recorded, and I couldn't get anyone to like commit finally. And I was just sitting on there, and then I had to buy them back. And it finally it came out. It got fantastic reviews, and it was written up everywhere. And I did a lot of shows as best I could with one or two of those singers over the years.
That's a triumph in my book.
Well, thank you. No, I think so too. But look, I've got a volume 2 and 3 that's I've been sitting in.
All
It's in
right.
the can, but yeah,
Cool.
I haven't found anybody anywhere to commit to releasing it in
Hmm.
any form. And I think it's better even, sonically and playing wise. It's also there's a really cool version of All Along the Watchtower, which I did a video for. You could hear
Wow.
that. Yeah, in Chinese and Mandarin. So just plug Gary Lucas All Along the Watchtower, and you can see this clip.
Oh, very
So
cool.
it's on the Essential Gary Lucas as a teaser, as well as another one, you know. But I'm not getting. I don't know what to push next. I went to the Knitting Factory, and they said, well, we already got this other one, and they let it go out of print. I've got the rights back, but whether I can find anybody to reissue it or put the old one out again with this new package, every day I'm like rolling a stone up the hill. And the
Well,
first thing is usually I got to get some more gigs,
hmm.
even though the gigs pay so little uh, versus what might be possible if you can get a sync license on
Hmm.
a track, for film or TV. It's a lot
Yeah.
more lucrative route, but they're not giving them out. They don't grow on trees either.
Well, I'm
So,
glad you're sharing that. So,
yeah. I mean, it's
you
tough.
could
I
have.
just would tell young people in general, try and diversify, and put a lot of different music out. You
Mhm.
never know what's going to strike.